Thank you for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. Oftentimes, we would like life to be simple. We would like to handle one thing at a time, that we just have to deal with our kids, or we just have to deal with one of our kids, or we need to deal with the mess that's going on in the house or in the kitchen, or how upset our boss got today because we weren't done with this project yet, or we weren't up to date on our deadlines. We'd really love to work on one thing, but hardly ever happens. And hence, oftentimes, we get caught in the middle. So let me tell you something. I'm going to address today the multiplicity of issues of a middle aged parent. It'd be great if you only had a 4-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 12-year-old to handle. That would be amazing, right? But then you also have your mom and dad who might be in their mid to late 60s and they're having some health problems and they're trying to deal with the fact that their financial portfolio doesn't look as great as they thought it was going to look in their retirement. And let's be honest, with some parents who haven't been super responsible in their lifetimes, they end up with all kinds of problems. And those problems, pretty soon, they become your problems. Of course, then you're dealing with your siblings and your friends and your work relationships and sometimes your church relationships, your social settings of clubs and organizations that you belong to. Wow, help me. You are caught in the middle of all of these demands and all of these people and all of these stresses. What in the world are you supposed to do about all that? Yeah, it's a really good question. It's an important question as a parent because all of us have this tendency to take what I'm going to call the urgent thing first and leave the unimportant thing until later because it isn't screaming at us like the urgent thing is. So when you get caught in the middle, one of the important things is to acknowledge that's what's going on. Oh my word, I'm the guy in the middle, and they keep throwing all this stuff over my head and around me, and I'm the one who's supposed to be taking care of it or juggling it, at least in your own thoughts. I'm not saying it's not legitimate either, don't misunderstand me, but in your own thoughts, you're the person who's supposed to be handling all this stuff, and you find yourself not handling it very well. So you're caught in the middle. When you acknowledge it, somehow at least you can say, okay, I'm really feeling this caught in the middle thing. Then you need to address the priorities. Granted, if you're at work and you do have a deadline, that kind of is a priority because you need your job so everybody can eat and you can pay the light bill. I get that. You do have to expend energy on that. But you know what? You need to expend energy on that while you're at work, not when you're at home. That includes mental space, okay? If you go home and you're still chewing on that for 2 or 3 hours, you aren't present with your family and you aren't addressing those things that need to get taken care of at home. So, what I want to say to you is be where you are and handle what you're handling. But when that part is over, close that door and move on to the next thing. Many times it's much easier for you, Dad, than it is for us moms. We tend to hang on to things. But, Mom, it's a skill you can learn, and it's a skill you need to begin to learn that when that thing is finished, because you can't touch it right now, it's out of your personal sphere at the moment. Close that door mentally too and emotionally and leave it there. And go home and give everything that you have to the kids and to your mate. All right, so then I hate to say this, unless your parent has really severe dementia or fell and broke their hip or has something massively critical going on, your own children are your priority. Okay, I want you to have that straight in your head because little kids can't handle things. They can't take care of themselves. Adults, they can find a way. I don't care if they find a live-in caretaker or they have a visiting nurse or they have a friend who stops in 3 or 4 times a day or they have a single friend that can come and stay with them for a week or a month or a sibling of yours or a sibling of theirs. Your parent is an adult. They can find a solution for themselves. Your child is not, and he or she cannot. So your priority must be your own children. So let me tell you something. If you come from a dysfunctional family, if you have a really manipulative or controlling or pushy parent, you might find that hard to do. I want you to know I'm giving you permission right now to look at your parent and say, I appreciate that you raised me and took care of me, and it was important. And now I'm going to raise and care for my own children because I recognize its importance, thanks to the things that you taught me. And as an adult, You have options, and my children only have me. I mean, set up a boundary. We talked about that before. You get the right to establish the boundaries in your own life, no matter what kind of emotional behavior your parent might have. You are allowed to set boundaries. And for you, your children are your number one priority relationally, not your folks. Okay? Just so we have that straight. All right. Now, in all these other obligations, your social obligations, things at church, your own siblings, all of these things that keep catching you in the middle, the next thing you might need to do is establish guidelines. First, within your own thinking, long before you try to do it with them. So, as you've heard me say before, you don't go off on a tangent and just come up with something and spout it off and then later go, oh, I should have thought this through some more. I'm not really sure that's going to work, or I don't think that was what I actually meant. You have to evaluate what's going on in your life. Literally, something good to do is to, especially if you have a calendar, keep track. So, in other words, I'm spending half of an hour getting ready for work, half of an hour getting the kids to school, 8 hours at work, half an hour of getting everybody back. That's 9.5 hours right there. Dude, I mean, you got to sleep sometimes. Even if you're sleeping 7 hours, that is literally leaving you 7 hours left in your day. That's including time to run to the bathroom, just so you know. But okay, so you have to keep track and say, all right, so I spent 20 minutes on the phone with my sister and half an hour on the phone with my mom and an hour at this meeting. We grabbed fast food on the way home. I spent 15 minutes with the kids yelling at them and getting them into bed. And then I sat down to read for an hour. Wow. Yeah, see what I mean? If you'll keep track of all of this for a week, then you can actually begin to evaluate and say, I'm spending an awful lot of time on the phone with my sis. And granted, she's a good friend of mine and we have things going on with mom and dad, but then I'm giving my kids 15 minutes a day. Oh, and I'm throwing fast food at them 4 times a week. You probably want to make an evaluation. Is that actually what you want to do? Are you making good use of your time? Are you prioritizing what is really important? Okay, that's what I mean by evaluate. All right, if you're a single parent, it even gets worse because you have very little support. Maybe your sister's your major support system. That might be a whole different story. But rather than that hour to yourself after the kids go to bed, you might spend that 20 minutes with your sister besides the 15 minutes that you give the kids, which is giving them more like 45 minutes, and talking to your sister after the kids went to bed. That's what I mean about making evaluations. Then you establish guidelines. So you tell those other people in your life, do you know what? You cannot call me between the hours of. Now, I'm not going to tell you hard and fast rules. I'm just going to give you an illustration. All right, let's say that you work from 7 to 3. You pick up the kids from school at 3:30 and you're all home by 4. Then you're juggling homework and meal preparation and sitting down to a meal and spending some family time, getting the kids to bed. So literally you establish a guideline from 4 to 9. You may not call me. You tell your mom, you tell your best friend, you tell your sister. From 4 to 9, you may not call me. Literally, if you have to, turn your phone off. I know most of us are so tethered to our phones. You may not be able to stand it in the beginning, but at least turn the ringer off completely. And like maybe once an hour, look at that phone. And if it is not an emergency, don't call anyone. Learn to set priorities and keep the important things set aside. Okay? 5 hours out of your day, that's not an unreasonable amount of time for your family, especially when everything else is thrown into that. All right, that's just a suggestion. I'm not saying you have to do it or you better do it. I'm saying to you, you must establish guidelines. I don't care if you establish that guideline from 6 to 9, but learn to set aside time for what is important. Okay? And your kids, your family unit, that is important. So make sure that you make it a priority. Then I'm going to give you this one as a big, big deal, okay? And you're already busy and you've already got all these demands and you're going to go, man alive, Miss Violet, you're losing your mind. Actually, no. I'm trying to help to keep you from losing yours. And I mean that with my whole heart. Make yourself a priority. That means you exercise for 30 minutes in the morning. That means that you eat well. That means that you take the time to prepare a meal and sit down with your kids and your family a very bare minimum of twice a week, more like 4 or 5 times, okay? Because then you are taking good care of yourself. Oh, and get some sleep. Now, I'm going to tell you, because I've told you this in the past, and I don't have any trouble being honest with you. There are days in my life when I'm sitting there messing around with my phone, playing games, looking at Facebook, yada, yada. I go to bed an hour later than I should have. So even me, I'm an old lady and I can have that battle. So I can appreciate how you can have that battle. And yet, it is a big, big thing to take care of yourself. And sleeping well, and sleeping consistently, that's a big part of taking care of yourself. So make sure that you're sleeping well, eating well, exercising, taking care of your own self. That's a big deal, because if you are not taking care of yourself, pretty soon you're not going to be able to take care of anyone. I promise you this. You're going to end up sick. You're going to end up in trouble. Don't do it. Take care of yourself. Then take care of your own kids and your own family unit. And then you can deal with all these other things. One of the other aspects of that evaluation is saying, wow, I didn't realize that 7 or 8 weeks out of, pardon me, I misspoke. 7 or 8 days out of every month, I'm somewhere. I'm at this business meeting. I'm at this, group that I belong to, a quilting group, a pottery group, a whatever. I'm not telling you to get rid of everything, so don't misunderstand me. But in that evaluation process, say, is this really out of 30 days a good thing for me to be gone? We'll say 8. Is it a good thing for me to be gone 8 days out of 30? That's more than one time out of every 4 days. And I've already got all these other things. So I want to tell you again, this is about self-care. It's about your sanity. You definitely need to keep some of those things, especially some of those things that maybe don't place a high demand on you and give you a lot of value, help you relax, put beauty into your life, really put meaning into your life. But things that are adding extra stress or extra pressure and taking time away from your other priorities, in that evaluation, you may decide there are things that you need to let go of. Just so you understand that. All right. Okay, so we're going to go back to what I'm going to call parallel relationships, your siblings, your friends, your work colleagues. And as long as they're showing support to you rather than putting demands on you when you're at this really busy, caught in the middle part, that's great. If they're making demands on you, I don't know why you never have any time to go out with me. I don't know why you never have any time to talk to me on the phone anymore. I just can't believe that everything else in your life is so much important. Well, guess what? Don't apologize for that. Your children are important. They are only going to be little kids one time. And if this person is your good friend or your sibling, they've already been there for 35 years and they're going to be there another 20. They can hang on a little while, and actually they can show support to you, especially if you have older parents who are having some issues, health issues, financial issues, other issues going on. It can be a great time to talk things out with your siblings, but don't get into this whole, bellyache, gripe, whine, and cry thing with each other, where instead of really looking for solutions, we'll use the nice word venting, but all it's doing is bringing emotional agitation to you or to your sibling, but not really coming to any kind of a solution or any kind of plan of action to start to help your parents. So don't add to your own stress in an already stressful time. I had a fascinating conversation with someone the other day about an event that happened in our family. And they said, "Oh, you just caused so much drama about this." I kept my mouth shut. And later, in thinking it over, all I did was ask one person something. And that person communicated it to another person. And the second person was all angry and upset and frustrated and bent out of shape that they weren't included in this whole conversation. So they made all their own drama. Then they talked to a number of other family members about it. And pretty soon, everyone's all up in arms over one conversation that didn't even include them. Let me say to you, don't make your own drama. It really doesn't need to happen like that. If you have this conversation with your sibling or siblings and someone wants to start getting all dramatic and, say, you know what? I really don't need to play drama. And you don't need to be having a drama. We're having a friendly conversation here, and we're seeking resolution, not to add additional problems to the mix. That's what I mean. You can set a boundary, and that's a very appropriate thing to do. So don't let anyone around you make drama that is unnecessary either. Okay. Somebody somewhere has to be in charge of this whole mess about your mom and dad, especially if it's really critical. Okay? So you're caught in this middle, but you're not the person with the power. I always say there's not a worse feeling in the world than having all of the responsibility, none of the power. Bad, bad place to go. So don't go there. If you're the person in your family who's usually in charge, then you need to establish that beyond a shadow of doubt. Look, if I'm going to deal with things about mom and dad, if I'm going to be calling the doctor, if I'm going to be taking off of work and taking dad to the doctor, if I'm going to have to deal with finding them a caregiver, then you need to stay out of my way. Don't be interfering with me, or I don't know who you think you are. We're not doing that. Otherwise, you can be in charge. No problem. You call the doc. You take dad to the doctor. You go pick up his medications. You make sure that he has a caregiver in the afternoons. Great. And I'm going to stay out of your way. But a person needs to be in charge. Other people can be supportive, or how could I help you? And then don't interfere with the person in charge, and don't try to boss them around. Don't try to second guess them. Granted, if they're not doing a good job of it, like your mom and dad are missing all their doctor's appointments or they're not getting their medications, then you got to have another sit-down discussion with them, of course. But what I'm saying is, within your family unit, if there are things going on, decide who's in charge and let them have not just the responsibility, but give them the power. Let them have it. Because the land's sick. There's nothing worse than having all the frustration of what's going on and all the worry and concern and all the emotional weight of I really love them and it's not going well, and then have somebody else get in your path all the time and stand in your face and second guess everything you're doing. That's really not okay. So if your family hasn't been real strong and healthy up to this place, it's a point where you can help your entire family, not just your children, start to get to be a little emotionally healthier in their responses and their reactions and even in their behaviors toward one another. We will talk about this again. I just wanted to introduce this subject to you, that I want to acknowledge to you as a middle-aged parent. You probably have a lot going on in your world. Sometimes you're probably like at your wits' end about what in the world. So again, I want to tell you the two most important things I said today. I really want you to evaluate how you're doing at this. 1, take care of yourself. 2, take care of your children. I know there are other demands. I'm not saying ignore everything. I'm telling you, make the priorities the first thing that you deal with. My challenge question for today is, are you caught in the middle? Not everyone is, and I acknowledge that and thank God for that. But some of you are. I would love to hear from you. Please send me an email at Paint a Beautiful Picture. I'd be happy to go and check out my website, and I would love to have your comments or your questions down below. Thank you so much for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. You may find additional information on our paintabeautifulpicture.com website. Additionally, you may watch me on Rumble, and you may also listen to a podcast on Buzzsprout or Spreaker, all under the name Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You may subscribe, and if you are interested in receiving notifications, please hit the notifications button.